All right, good morning. I want to start out by telling us a little story. A couple weeks ago, I was in an impromptu prayer group. It was one of those things where prayer groups where there's like 6 or 8 people, and everybody takes turns being prayed for. And the person stands in the middle of the group or sits, and then people will put their hands on the person's shoulder and make requests before God for the person, and sometimes share images or inspiration for the person that they believe they're getting from God. And while it was my turn to be prayed for, this woman said, "I don't know why I'm getting this image, but I'm getting the image of a walnut." Yeah, that was my response. It was like, seriously, what does that mean? And she said, "I don't know what that means, except all I know is a walnut has a hard outer shell that's tan and wrinkly, and the good stuff is on the inside, but you have to crack the outer shell to get to the good stuff." That wasn't the encouragement I was looking for or hoping for in the prayer group, but I have to admit it was pretty insightful. I am oftentimes described by people as being hard to get to know, sometimes described as being aloof, maybe cold. Some 20-somethings have said I'm scary when they first meet me. I don't come across as a joyous person, as a happy person, as a God-praising person, which is what I'd like to talk about today, because there's a lot of reason in our scriptures to really be joyful and praiseworthy. I don't know if you heard the musicians singing the psalm response, but King David is extraordinarily joyful. He's extraordinarily praising of God, thankful. He says he's going to tell people about God's works and sing of his works. And other kings will come to be joyful as well because of what David says to them, or maybe because he conquers them. I'm not sure. But he tells people happily about God. So I'm wondering, why am I not like King David? Why am I more like a walnut than like King David? And I think one of the factors that is that I don't remember to focus on the good things that God has done for me. I don't think about it. I get caught up in the cares of the world, all the busyness of the day, and I don't think about how God has given me wonderful gifts and sacrificed himself for me, loved me. Paul, in the letter to the Corinthians, says, "I am reminding you, brothers and sisters." He reminds people to think about the gospel of God. What is the gospel? It is that Jesus came, that God came in the flesh, in the form of Jesus, died, was buried, and resurrected according to the scriptures on the 3rd day. He reminds them to think about that. Why? What's joyous or what's important about that? The reality is, we're sinful. I'm sinful, you're sinful. Everybody sins. And that sin separates us from God. Potentially for eternity, but also in this life. The natural spiritual consequence of sinning is separation from God. And Jesus came and stepped in so that we don't have to pay that consequence. We don't have to pay that penalty. He died for us in our place so that we could spend eternity with God in heaven. Think about the extraordinary gift of that in our lives. That we can spend forever in joy and peace and happiness and comfort and pleasure and enjoy the worship of God for eternity. Our sin doesn't just affect eternity, though. It also separates us from God here on earth, in our relationships with God here on earth. You saw that with Peter. The scripture talks about the miracle where Jesus comes in. He says, "Drop your nets over there." Peter says, "Lord, I'm not, we've been fishing all day." And he goes, "Go ahead and do it anyway." And this miracle of fish being caught. And Peter realizes the glory of the Lord working through Jesus. And his first response, realizing that he's having an encounter with God, is to say, "Depart from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." Our sinfulness leads us to actually want to sometimes move away from God. The effect is that we go further away. Same thing with Isaiah in the Old Testament, right? He sees a vision of God in the temple. God's garments fill the whole temple. He hears the angels singing His response in the encounter with God's grandeur and glory is to say, I am a man of unclean lips. He feels that separation. He feels the difference between God's holiness and his own sinfulness. And he feels small and unworthy. The good news is that God doesn't leave us there. He extends his grace to us, cleanses us as he cleansed Isaiah, fills us with his Spirit if we're receptive, and equips us to go out and to be happy, to tell other people about Christ, to tell other people about God's grace. Brothers and sisters, we are a blessed and loved group of people. We have the opportunity to spend eternity with God in heaven. The cares of this world, all that stuff that occupies my attention, is a blink of an eye compared to the eternity that we can have in heaven. And my encouragement with you today, along with the Apostle Paul, is that we focus on that. We remind ourselves of God's love, his caring, the gift of grace, and we rejoice. We rejoice on a daily basis. And we be willing to tell other people about this love of Christ that's available to them as well. May God bless you.
622.